first little story is called How Gluskap Made the Birds. Once upon a time, long before the white men came to Canada, there lived a wicked giant who caused great trouble and sorrow wherever he went. Men called him Wolf Wind. Where he was born no man knows, but his home was in the Cave of the Winds, far in the North Country, in the Night Land. And there men knew he was hiding on calm days when the sun was hot and the sea was still, and on quiet nights when not a leaf or a flower or a blade of grass was stirring. But whenever he appeared, the great trees cracked in fear, and the little trees trembled, and the flowers bent their heads close to the earth, trying to hide from his presence. Often he came upon them without warning, and with little sign of his coming, and then the corn fell flat, never to rise again, and the tall trees crashed in the forest, and the flowers dropped dead because of their terror, and often the great waters grew white and moaned or screamed loudly, or dashed themselves against the rocks, trying to escape from Wolf Wind. And in the darkness of the night, when Wolf Wind howled, there was great fear upon all of earth. It happened once in those old times that Wolfwind was in a great rage, and he went forth to kill and devour all who dared to come in his path. It chanced in that time that many Indian families were living near the sea. The men and women were fishing far off the coast. They were catching fish to make food for the winter. They went very far away in small canoes, for the sea had long been still, and they thought there was no danger. The little children were alone on the shore. Suddenly, as the sun went down, without a sign of his coming, out of the north came Wolfwind in his great rage, looking for prey, and roaring loudly as he came. "I am Wolfwind the giant," he howled. "Cross not my path, for I will kill all the people I meet and eat them up." His anger only grew as he stalked along, and he splashed and tossed the waters aside in his fury as he came down upon the fishermen and the fisherwomen far out at sea. The fishers had no time to get out of his reach or to paddle to the shore, so quick was Wolfwind's coming, and the giant caught them in his path and broke up their boats and killed them all. All night long he raged over the ocean, looking for more fishers. In the morning, Wolfwind's anger was not yet spent. Far away in front of him he saw the little children of the fishers playing on the shore. He knew they were alone, for he had killed their fathers and mothers. He resolved to catch them and kill them too, and after them he went, still in a great rage. He went quickly towards the land, roaring as he went and dashing the water against the rocks in his madness. As he came near the beach, he howled in anger, "I will catch you and kill you all, and eat you and bleach your bones upon the sand." But the children heard him, and they ran away as fast as they could, and they hid in a cave among the great rocks, and placed a big stone at the mouth of the cave, and Wolfwind could not get in. He howled loudly at the door all day and all night long, but the stone was strong, and he could not break it down. Then he went on his way, still very angry and still roaring, and he howled, "I will come back and catch you yet. You cannot escape from me." The children were very frightened, and they stayed long in the cave after Wolfwind had gone, for far away they could sailors on the sea. They ran away into the forest, for they thought that there they would be safe. They went to the willow land, where they found a pleasant place with grass and flowers and streams. And between them and the north country where Wolfwind lived were many great trees with thick leaves, which they knew would protect them from the giant. But one day, Wolfwind, true to his promise, came again in a rage to find them. He came into the land, killing all that he met in his path. But he could not catch the children, for the trees with their thick leaves kept him away. They heard him howling in the forest far distant. For many days in the late summer he tried to find them, but their home was close to the trees, and the great branches spread over them, and the thick leaves saved them, and only the sun from the south, coming from the summer flower country, could look in upon them. Try as he could with all his might, old Wolfwind could not harm them, although he knew that they were there, and they were always safe while they lived in the willow land. Wolfwind was more angry than ever because of his failure, for he liked to feed on his little children, and rage knew no bounds. He swore that he would have vengeance on the trees, so he came back again, and he brought with him to aid him another giant from the north country, who had with him a strange and powerful charm, the charm of the frost. And the two giants tried to kill the trees that had saved the little children, but over many of the trees they had no power, for when they came, the trees only laughed and merely swayed and creaked and said, "You cannot harm us. We are strong, for we came at first from the night land in the far north country, and over us the charm of the frost has no power." These were the spruce and the fir, the hemlock and the pine and the cedar. But on the other trees Wolfwind had vengeance as he had vowed. One night, when the harvest moon was shining in the sky, he came without warning, and with the help of the giant bearing the charm of the frost, he killed all the leaves that had kept him from the children, and threw them to the ground. One after one the leaves came off from the beech and the birch, the oak and the maple, the alder and the willow. Some fell quick, some fluttered slowly down, some took a long time in dying. But at last the trees stood bare and cold against the sky, and there were stillness and sadness in the forest. And Wolfwind laughed and played in silence through the leafless branches with the giant from Night Land, and he said, "Now I have overcome the leaves that kept me away, and now when I please I can kill the children." But the children only moved closer to the strong and sturdy trees that had come at first from the far north country, and over which the charm of the frost had no power, and Wolfwind could not reach them, and they were still forever safe from the giants. At last it came to that time of year when Gluskap, who ruled upon the earth and was very great in those days, gave his yearly gifts to little children, and he came into the land on a sled, drawn by his faithful dogs, to find out for himself what the children wished for. And the children all came to him, each asking for a boon. Now Gluskap had great power upon the earth in that old time. He could always do what he willed, and the little children whom Wolfwind had tried to harm in his rage came to Gluskap, the magic master of gifts, and they were all very sad because the leaves had gone. "What do you wish?" said Gluskap. "We wish nothing for ourselves," said the children, "but we ask that the leaves that were killed by Wolfwind and put back again in their old home in the trees. Gluskap was silent for a long time, and he sat and thought as was his custom, and he smoked hard at his mighty pipe, for he was a great smoker. Now in that time there were no little forest birds upon the earth, for Gluskap had not yet brought them into being. There were only the birds that dwelt near the sea, and over whom Wolfwind had no power, seagull and crane, wild duck and loon, kingfisher and brant and curlew. These only laughed at the giant in his rage, and screamed in mockery as they flew from him, and hid when he came among the shallows, or the rock, or the thick grass in the marshes. And there were also the sturdy birds that dwelt with men, and worked for them, giving them eggs and food. These were hen and goose, and duck, and wild turkey. They gave men food, but they were not fair to look upon. They waddled along, and could not fly well, and they made no sweet music upon the earth, for their song was a quack and a cackle. Gluskap decided to bring other birds into the world, not to give food, but to bring happiness to the children on the days where summer dwells in the land, with their pretty feathers and their pleasant songs. So after he had smoked long in silence, he hit upon a plan, and he said to the children, asking for their yearly gifts, I cannot bring back to the trees the leaves that Wolfwind has killed and stripped off, for it is now too late. But I will take the fallen leaves and change them into little birds, and the birds shall never forget how they were born. When autumn comes, they shall go with summer far away to the summer flower land, but in the springtime they shall always come back, and they shall live as close as they can to the leaves from which they have sprung. And they shall nest, most of them, in the trees under the leaves, and even those that nest in the grass shall love the trees and linger in them, and they shall all be beautiful in colour like the leaves that gave them birth, and they shall have power to rest at times upon the air like a leaf fluttering, and the voice of the air and the laughing waters shall be in their throats, and they shall sing sweet songs for little children. And I give the children charge over them to keep them from harm, just as the leaves which gave them birth have saved the little children from the giants. And I will give the trees that Wolfwind has stripped power to bring forth new leaves every springtime, so that when summer comes back from the wilderness of flowers, the trees shall not be bare. And although Wolfwind may strip them off when the giant of the frost comes with him from the night-night land, they shall always be replaced in the springtime. And I will take away much of Wolfwind's power, so that he can no longer harm little children as wickedly as he has done before. Gluskap waved his magic wand as was his custom, and at once great flocks of little birds sprang from the ground where the fallen leaves had lain, and they twittered and sang in great chorus and flew back to the trees. They were of beautiful colours like the leaves that had given them birth. There were robin redbreasts and thrushes all brown and red, from the red and brown leaves of the oak, and there were finches and hummingbirds all yellow and green and brown, from was very lazy. He had worked long for Gluskap, the great ruler of the people, as a forest guide, but his toil was not appreciated or rewarded. He saw all the other animals idling their time away, taking their ease all day long, and doing nothing but filling their bellies with food, and sleeping all the afternoon in the hot sunshine. And he said, "Why should I work for other people when nobody works for me? And I will take mine ease like all the other animals." So he sulked in his little house for a long time, and could not be coaxed or driven to do any work. But as he was a lonely fellow who always lived by himself, with very few children in the world except little children, he soon got tired of this lazy life. For by nature he was industrious and energetic, and he always liked to be doing something or prowling alone in the forest. So he said, "I must find some work to do, or I shall surely lose my wits. But it must be labour that brings profit to myself, and not to other people." For a long time Rabbit puzzled his brains, thinking on a business or a profession to follow, but nothing seemed to be to his liking. At last, one day, he saw some Indians trading skins and knives. One was selling and others were buying, and they seemed to be making a great deal of money without doing very much work. Rabbit thought that here indeed was an easy way to make a living. Then he saw Duck coming along, carrying a basket of eggs. He said to Duck, "How do you get along in the world? You seem to do nothing but eat and cackle and swim in the pond. You never seem to work." And Duck said, "I lay eggs and sell them in exchange for corn. Why don't you lay eggs? It is all very easy." But Rabbit knew that Duck was only laughing at him, and he was not meant to make a living in that way. Then he met Bee on the forest path, and he said, "How do you make a living, you wandering bee? You do nothing but gad about all day long, going from flower to flower, dressed in your good clothes of yellow and black, and always singing your tuneless song." And Bee said, "I make honey and wax and sell them. I have a great store for sale now. Why don't you do as I do? I am always happy. I always sing at my work, and what's more, my song is not tuneless. And just for your impudence, take that." And so saying, he stung Rabbit on the nose, and went on his way, singing his droning song. Rabbit rubbed his nose in the earth to ease his pain, and he swore vengeance on Bee, for he knew that Bee was too only laughing at him. But he could think of no way to make an easy living, for he had nothing to sell but his coat, and he could not very well barter that, for winter would soon be coming on. He was very angry and troubled, and he envied Duck and Bee their good fortune because of their eggs and honey and wax. At last he thought of the Indians he had watched buying and selling skins. slip into the field, but without success, and the week passed, and still he had no corn for the customers who, he knew, would soon be arriving for their goods. And meanwhile he had spent all their money, and he knew they would all fall upon him and kill him if he failed to keep his word and deliver their purchases. At last, when the day agreed on arrived, he saw the customers coming for their grain, and he hoped that his tricks would save him as they saved him many times before. He sat in his yard playing his flute when Earthworm, the first customer, arrived. "Good day," said Rabbit. "Good day," said Earthworm. "I have come for my corn, for a week has gone by." "Very good," said Rabbit, "but first we shall have dinner. It will be ready in a few minutes. You must be hungry after your long journey." As they sat waiting for their dinner, they saw Duck, another customer, waddling up the path with her basket on her neck. And Rabbit said, "Will not old Duck who comes here want to eat you up?" And Earthworm said, "Yes, yes, where shall I hide?" And he was much excited. "Hide under this clamshell," said Rabbit. So Earthworm crawled under the clamshell and sat very still, trembling for his life. When Duck arrived, Rabbit said, "Good morning." "Good morning, Mr. Merchant," said Duck, wishing to be polite. "I have come for my corn, for it is the appointed day of delivery." "True, true," said Rabbit, "but first we shall have dinner. It will be ready in a few minutes. It will be an honour for me to have you dine with me." As they sat waiting for their dinner, Rabbit said, "Would you care to eat an earthworm before your dinner? It would be a good appetizer for you." And Duck said, "Thank you very much. I am very fond of earthworms." Rabbit lifted the clamshell, and poor Earthworm was quickly gobbled up by the duck. And Rabbit, laughing to himself, thought, "Now I am getting rid of my customers." As Rabbit and Duck sat talking, they saw Fox trotting up the path. He was another customer coming for his corn, and Rabbit said courteously, "Madam, I see your old enemy Fox approaching. He will probably wish to eat you up. You had better hide." And Duck, with her feathers all ruffled with excitement, said, "Yes, yes, where shall I hide?" And Rabbit said, "Hide under this basket." So Duck crawled under the overturned basket and sat very still. Fox soon came in and said, "Good day, Rabbit. I have come for my corn, for I am in sore need of it to catch chickens, and 7 days have passed." "You are very punctual," said Rabbit, "but first let us have dinner. It will be ready in a few minutes. It will make you stronger to carry your heavy load." As they sat waiting for dinner, Rabbit said, "Listen, Fox, would you care to eat a fat duck now? It would be a tasty bit for you before you dine." And Fox said, "You are very kind. I always like to eat duck before my dinner." Rabbit knocked over the basket, and Fox quickly devoured poor Duck, until not a feather remained. And Rabbit laughed to himself and said, "Surely I am getting rid of my customers very easily." As Rabbit and Fox sat talking over old times in the forest, they saw Bear coming lumbering up the path, tossing his head from side to side and sniffing the air. And Rabbit said, "Bear is in a bad temper today. I wonder what can be the cause." And Fox said, "This morning I stole all of his honey, and he saw me running away." "He scents you here," said Rabbit. "Will he not kill you if he finds you? Perhaps you ought to hide." "Yes, yes," said Fox, "but where shall I hide?" "Hide in this box," said Rabbit. And Fox sprang into the box, and Rabbit closed down the lid. When Bear arrived, he said gruffly, for he was in a bad temper, I must be on my way. It is the appointed time. It is indeed the appointed time, said Rabbit, but first we shall have dinner. It will be ready in a few minutes, and I never let a wayfarer leave my house without first taking nourishment. I have today a dish of fresh fish, which you will like very well, and we have never yet dined together. And Bear agreed to wait, and his gruffness left him at the thought of his good meal, for he was a great fish eater, and talked pleasantly. Then Rabbit said, I have a secret to tell you. Let me whisper it. He put his mouth close to Bear's ear and said, Old Fox, the sly thief who stole all your honey this morning, is hiding in the box by your side. He came here to boast about his theft, and he laughed loudly to me as he told me how easily you were cheated. He called you lack brains. Bear was very angry, and at once he knocked the lid from the box and killed Fox with one blow of his powerful paw. And Rabbit said to himself, What luck I am having. There is another of my customers gone. But he wondered how he was to get rid of Bear, and he scratched his head in thought. When Bear and Rabbit sat talking, they saw Rabbit's last customer, the hunter, come along. Bear would have run away, but it was too late. Will the hunter not want to kill you? Said Rabbit, glad to think that here was the end of poor Bear. Indeed he will, said Bear. Oh dear, where shall I hide? Hide under my bed in my house, said Rabbit. Poor Bear quickly dashed into the house and crawled under Rabbit's bed with great difficulty, for he was very fat and the bed was very low, and he had to lay himself out flat on the floor, but he was comfortable in the thought that he would soon escape. When Hunter arrived, he said, Good day, Rabbit. I have come for my corn, for my children need bread. You shall have it, said Rabbit, but first we must have a bite to eat. I have not very much to offer you, but I can give you in a few minutes some hot pancakes and fresh maple syrup. The hunter was well pleased with the thought of such a good meal, and he said he would be glad to wait. Then Rabbit said, Would you like some bear meat for your children and a good warm bear skin for your hearth? And the hunter said, Indeed I would, but in these days such luxuries are hard to find. And Rabbit said, Oh no, they are not. Under my bed in my house a good fat bear is hiding. He is lying flat on his back, and you can easily kill him. The hunter hurried to the house, and sure enough, he found Bear hiding under the bed flat upon his back. He killed him with a blow, and skinned him, and cut him up into small pieces, and put the meat and the skin into a bag to take home to his children. But while he was about it, Rabbit slipped away into the forest, saying to himself, Now I have got rid of all my customers, and I am safe. But the life of a merchant is not to my liking. I will not be a trader any more. I will gather corn for myself, but not to sell to others. And he ran quickly away and hid himself in a dense thicket. When the hunter went to look for Rabbit, he could not find him, nor was he able to find his grain. And although he thought he had fared pretty well by getting so much bear meat, he swore vengeance on Rabbit for his deceit, and to this day he searches for him, and if he meets him, he will not let him escape. And Rabbit lives by himself and keeps away from the hunter as far as he can, for he fears because of the trick he played upon him in the olden days. The third and final story I'll do today is called The Boy Who Was Called Thickhead. 3 brothers lived with their old Indian mother in the forest near the sea. Their father had long been dead. At his death, he had little of the laugh at you and call you a fool, but you will always prove to be wiser than all of them yet, for so it was told me by a forest fairy at your birth. The chief of the people had a beautiful daughter who had many suitors, but her father spurned them all from his door and said, "My daughter is not yet of age to marry, and when her time of marriage comes, she will only marry the man who can make great profit from hunting." The two older sons of the woman decided that one of them must win the girl. So they prepared to set out on a great hunting expedition far away in the northern forest, for it was now autumn and the hunter's moon had come. The youngest boy wanted to go with them, for he had never been away from home and he wished to see the world, and his mother said that he might go. His brothers were very angry when they heard his request, and they said, "Much good Thickhead can do us in the chase. He will only bring us bad luck. He is not a hunter, but a scullion and a drudge, fit for only the fireside." But his mother commanded them to grant the boy's wish, and they had to obey. So the three brothers set out for the north country, the two older brothers grumbling loudly because they were accompanied by the boy they thought a fool. The two older brothers had good success in the chase, and they killed many animals, deers and rabbits and otters and beavers, and they came home bearing a great quantity of dried meat and skins. They each thought, "Now we have begun to prove our prowess to the chief. If we succeed as well next year when the hunter's moon comes again, one of us will surely win his daughter when she is old enough to marry." But all the youngest boy brought home as a result of his journey into the game country was a large earthworm as thick as his finger and as long as his arm. It was the biggest earthworm he had ever seen. He thought it was a great curiosity as well as a great discovery, and he was so busy watching it each day that he had no time to hunt. When he brought it home in a box, his brothers said to their mother, "What did we tell you about Thickhead? He has now surely proved himself a fool. He has caught only a fat earthworm in all the weeks." And they noised it abroad in the village, and all the people laughed loudly at the silly boy, until Thickhead's hunt became a byword in all the land. But the boy's mother only smiled and said, "He will surprise you yet." The boy kept the worm in a tiny pen just outside the door of his home. One day a large duck came waddling along, and sticking her bill over the little fence of the pen, she quickly gobbled up the worm. The boy was very angry, and he went to the man who owned the duck and said, "Your duck ate up my pet worm. I want my worm." The man offered to pay him whatever price he asked, but the boy said, "I do not want your price. I want my worm." But the man said, "How can I give you your worm when my duck has eaten it up? It has gone forever." And the boy said, "It is not gone. It is in the duck's belly, so I must have the duck." Then, to avoid further trouble, the man gave Thickhead the duck, for he thought to himself, "What is the use of arguing with a fool?" The boy took the duck home and kept it in a little pen near his home with a low fence around it, and he tied a great weight to its foot so that it could not fly away. He was quite happy again, for he thought, "Now I have both my worm and the duck." But one day a fox came prowling along looking for food. He saw the fat duck tied by the foot in the little pen and said, "What good fortune, there is a choice meal for me," and in a twinkling he was over the fence. The duck quacked and made a great noise, but she was soon silenced. The fox had just finished eating up the duck when the boy, who had heard the quacking, came running out of the house. The fox was smacking his lips after his good meal, and he was too slow in getting away. The boy fell to beating him with a stout club, and soon killed him and threw his body into the yard behind the house. and said, "Much good a dead wolf will do you. Before 2 days have passed, it will be an evil-smelling thing, and we shall have to bury it deep. You are indeed a great fool." The boy pondered for a long time over what they had said, and he thought, "Perhaps they are right. The dead wolf cannot last long. I will save the skin." So he skinned the wolf and dried the skin, and made a drum from it, for the drum was one of the few musical instruments of the Indians in those old times, and they beat it loudly at all of their dances and festivals. The boy beat the drum each evening and made a great noise, and he was very proud because he had the only drum in the whole village. One day the chief sent for him and said to him, "I want to borrow your drum for this evening. I am having a great gathering to announce to all the land that my daughter is now of the age to marry, and that suitors may now seek her hand in marriage. But we have no musical instruments, and I want your drum, and I myself will beat it at the dance." So Thickhead brought his drum to the chief's house, but he was not very well pleased because he had not been invited to the feast, whilst his brothers were among the favoured guests. And he said to the chief, "Be very careful. Do not tear the skin of my drum, for I can never get another like it. My worm and my duck and my fox and my wolf have all helped me to make it." The next day he went for the drum, but the chief had struck it too hard and had split it open, that it was now beyond repair. He offered to pay the boy a great price for it, but the boy said, "I do not want your price. I want my drum. Give me back my drum, for my worm and the duck and the fox and the wolf are all in it." The chief said, "How can I give you back your drum when it is broken? It is gone forever. I will give you anything you desire in exchange for it. Since you do not like the price I offer, you may name your own price, and you shall have it." And the boy thought to himself, "Here is a chance for good fortune. Now I shall surprise my brothers." And he said, "Since you cannot give me my drum, I will take your daughter in marriage in exchange." The chief was much perplexed, but he had to be true to his word, so he gave his daughter to Thickhead, and they were married, and the girl brought him much treasure, and they lived very happily. And his brothers were much amazed and angered because they had failed. But his mother said, "I told you he was wiser than you, and that he would outwit you, although you called him Thickhead and a fool. For the forest fairy said it to me at his birth." I like these little stories. There's loads more, so I'm definitely going to be doing a few more Canadian episodes for sure. Well, I hope you enjoyed these little stories and they managed to help you relax. Thank you so much for your support as always. It's amazing and I love to hear from you all. I will see you very, very soon